I'm Pat Manley. I'm a research ecologist with the Pacific Southwest Research Station, which is the research branch of the U.S. Forest Service. When you look at a forest, you're looking at biodiversity. That's what makes a forest, are the species that are in it. Some of the biodiversity that I really love here are both just the range of lower elevations. We have a lot of waterfowl. We have the Canada goose. We have many other waterfowl species that occupy the marshes and the mouths of these incredible rivers that all flow into the basin and into the lake. And then as you move up in elevation, you get these large raptors. We have spotted owls, we have osprey, we have bald eagles. You know, those are the species that a lot of people recognize and value and find exciting. Same thing with bears, a lot of bears in Tahoe. Historically, here in the basin, we had the majority of the landscape, over 50%, was in these old forests, large trees, densities of large trees, and all the species associated with them. In the late 1800s, the mining industry to support silver mining resulted in logging many of these old forests across the basin. And as of the late 1900s, we had only about 5% of the basin was left in old forests. So that's a really significant change. In addition, over that same time frame, the Forest Service and other well-meaning public agencies learned how and were very successful at suppressing fire. Fire is something that threatens these forests, but it's also a natural disturbance regime, and these forests depend on them. And that brings us to the present, where we have not a lot of large trees. We have a very low amount of old forests and all of those associated species and functions that are so precious about them. And where do we go from here in terms of biodiversity, old forests, the mosaic of forest conditions and other kinds of ecosystems across the basin, meadows, riparian areas, aspen. With the climate pressing on this basin and every other place on the planet, we are all faced with making some important decisions about what's important to us, what we value. What does a resilient ecosystem look like? And I think those values then help us understand and make good decisions about how to support these systems over time. One of the things that colleagues and I at University of Nevada, Reno and Pacific Southwest Research Station and other colleagues have started a system of an observatory for the Lake Tahoe called the Tahoe Environmental Observatory Network, or TEON for short. We feel that this is a system whose time has come. Many other systems that are as important and valuable and unique as Lake Tahoe have had these types of systems in place for multiple decades. And although we've had a lot of great investments in monitoring individual parts and pieces of the basin as we understand both the lake, upland, wildlife species, we don't really have a handle on the system as a whole, how these pieces are interacting, how they're changing in concert with one another. And that's what really helps us understand if the fabric is hanging together or if there are threads that's starting to fall apart that we need to really understand better so that we can provide whatever support we can from a management and policy perspective to keep this basin as intact and beautiful and sustainable as we possibly can.